the Honorable Minister of Information will be addressing a World Press Conference to further intimate and appraise Nigerians of the developments in all the sectors of the economy of the country.
I'm on air.
So, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, this is a World Press Conference. I will go to it straight away. So may I now invite the Honorable Minister of Information to please come and tell Nigerians what has been achieved after the 2013 ministerial review. Honorable Minister of Information.
The government is doing particularly concrete achievements that are come on stream because of the president's persistence in managing the economy. We have been again working on. There's no stopping it. So in the last couple of weeks, I can tell you that we are beginning to see more and more progress in the work we are doing. The most important area of focus is the economy, because that is what matters to all Nigerians. In the end, no matter the noise you hear in politics, the daily life depends on what the economy does, what is happening in the economy of Nigeria. Let me say this clearly again, that the economy is doing very, very well. And I give you examples. When an economy is doing well, I think you move there so that I don't see it directly with you. When an economy is doing well, you see it from the confidence, that the domestic and foreign investors give to your own economy. Now, for a long time, we continue to tell Nigerians that for the first time in the history of our country, the macroeconomic management of Nigeria has earned global confidence. And this has been consistently so in the last 3 years of the present administration. Now, what has happened over this period is that we have stability in the exchange rates for almost 3 years. That stability means that people can predict, people can plan, the cost of running their businesses, even if they have to import capital goods from abroad. So gradually we are beginning to see that increased investment as investment continue to flow into the economy. Only yesterday, Dangote Group here in Abuja, for many of you who are here, signed a facility, $3.3 billion facility, to build one of the largest refineries in this continent and a petrochemical complex here in Nigeria. Now, we are excited about this development because the Nigerian economy is very big. The world can't come here until we Nigerians are investing in the economy. The Dangote Group is opening the way. For a long time, we continue to ask questions. What is happening to refineries? What is happening to the downstream sector of the economy? The reality of the matter is that we will never be able to run the downstream sector if it depends on government. And that was why we have been struggling to deregulate that sector, to open it up. Now, because we haven't quite succeeded, we have been able now to create free trade zones where people can establish their own refineries and refine products for the domestic market as well as for the international market. And that is what Dangote is now taking advantage of. So as at yesterday, you saw this new development, and it's just the beginning of it. We also know, for example, that in the gas sector, Chevron is working on big facilities to produce liquefied natural gas, which will be on stream by the end of the year. Now, a lot of investment is going into gas, into the oil and energy sector. Now, we expect that in the next 3-4 years, this sector will be moving faster as we move gas up front into the country to energize companies. As at now, about 200 factories and companies in Nigeria are now depending on natural gas for powering their own equipment, for getting their own energy. Now, we are working hard to increase this because Nigeria has the largest natural gas deposit in the continent, and our gas master plan has been working so well. As at now, we have brought down gas flaring from 18% to 15%. It was 18%, but by this period, it has come down to just about 15%. Our hope is that in the next 2-3 years, we will eliminate gas flaring altogether, because our gas is now going really to power the economy. And we are also earning a lot of money from gas and creating jobs. We had reported to you here during the ministerial platform that we are building a huge petrochemical complex at Ogidingbi in Delta State. This is different from what Dangote is doing. Now that one is generating about 100,000 jobs during this period of construction, which has just taken off. So a lot is going on in the economy. Indeed, GDP growth this year is expected to be between about 6.7 to 7% by the end of this year. That is GDP growth in the economy. Now, GDP is crucial. It means the volume of growth of trade, goods and services in the economy is rising. And this is important because it's only from here that we can meet the needs of citizens. So we are still maintaining our number one position in GDP growth in the continent, as at the end of this year, that will again be established. So economically, we can tell you that the Nigerian economy is receiving greater confidence from the world, greater confidence. Investments are coming on in agriculture, investments are coming on in the gas sector, investments are coming on also in petrochemical companies that are being established, across the country. Now, let me also add that the National Economic Summit is just going on now. And for those of you who have been attending it in the last 2 days, you will see that this year's focus is on agriculture. For a long time, we continue to give lip service to the question of diversifying the economy. The president, through the transformation agenda, is giving this long proclaimed goal, which has never been fulfilled, reality. So agriculture is the focus. And yesterday, when the president was at the National Economic Summit, we launched a program that will ensure the rise in entrepreneurship in agriculture. About 750,000 young farmers are expected to get the opportunity in the agricultural sector. This program has been launched. But the most important thing in agriculture is the regulation that has taken place there. What is going on in agriculture has never been witnessed in this country since the collapse of marketing boards in the mid-80s. Today, we are seeing the agricultural sector driven by private companies, supplying seeds to farmers directly without government involvement, supplying fertilizers to farmers directly without federal government investment. We have eliminated the bureaucracies that are making it impossible for agriculture to work as a business. So what is going on is that because of these policies, the world is showing more and more interest in Nigeria's agriculture, and we're earning more from agriculture. From next year, we are going to see the onset of more cassava processing plants, which are being established to make sure Nigeria becomes not just the largest producer of cassava, or raw cassava, but the largest processor of cassava in the world into finished products for exports. That is what is going on, and a lot of money is coming in. Companies are establishing different processing plants in parts of the country so that farmers can produce. Industrialization follows agriculture. That is what has happened in Europe and in many other places. So we want to ensure that the new growth in agriculture is not the one of old, where raw materials will be exported to Europe. We also want to develop internal capacity to add value to our produce before we export them or before we sell them to the domestic market. And this is really catching on. In the area of rice, we have so far worked on 12 rice mills that will be processing rice for the domestic market. We saw one of them we saw one when we went to Ebonyi. Now the one in Kebbi must be completed by now, the Labana rice mill in Kebbi. Now, in all these areas also, we have established grain reserves that can hold, products for processing in these factories. So we are working to ensure that we get rice self-sufficiency in rice production for the domestic market and for export. We told you that right now, a private farmer has invested about $40 million in Taraba to establish modern rice farms. KB this year produced so much rice that Lagos State, that the economy is beginning to integrate. Lagos is now buying rice from KB State to process for its own economy. Now that is exactly what is going on in the economy. Last year we produced 1.1 metric tons of rice for the first time in decades. And this year we expect production to increase. And this is going on in KB, in Zamfara, in all the areas, including Niger State, Ebonyi State. All these states are now focusing on rice production. And we expect that Nigeria should have self-sufficiency by 2015, 2016. We should be able to stop rice importation. What I will say here is that I want to plead to our people. We need to patronize the local products. There are Nigerians that are hooked on to rice from abroad. The rice produced in this country today has better quality than the rice coming from abroad. Ebony rice, for example, that is the one that we are eating everywhere, including the presidency. We are no longer eating imported rice. Ebony rice is better than imported rice, and several rice products are already reaching the market from Makurdi, from Kano, from Ebonyi, from Kebbi. So we expect that we should support our citizens, our investors that are putting in their money. We should patronize them. If 167 million Nigerians insist that at least we will eat local products, let's say 70% of all we have in our kitchen is from Nigeria, that will automatically enable farmers to produce more. So side by side with the growth in agriculture is the campaign to ensure that we patronize local products. This is very, very important to sustain the growth in the agricultural sector. So we have seen also that under this period, particularly talking about the economy, we are going to visit with the media, particularly in the rice sector. We will take journalists before the end of this month to visit the progress we are making between Abuja and Kaduna on the new standard gauge rail line. We have gone about 70% now, both in terms of construction and laying of tracks. So we're going to carry people to visit to see for themselves this new rail line which is being constructed between Abuja and Kaduna. A lot of progress is going on. We will go there to verify the progress so that Nigeria on the Warri, Ajakuta, Etakwe rail line, standard gauge rail line. We saw the Warri end. We will be visiting Kogi in the course of the month or early next month on the National Good Governance Tour. Also there we will visit what is going on in the rail system in that area. Meanwhile, last week, the Minister of Transport launched the beginning of large-scale haulage of goods from Lagos to the north by rail. This was done in Lagos. So between then and now, a lot of traffic is going on. Much of the cement, much of the petroleum product that used to come to the north by road is now coming by rail from Lagos towards Kwara up to Mina, Kaduna and Kano. Now this has taken off a lot of pressure from our roads. This is what we want. So we have also just recently, after the ministerial platform, awarded a contract to do the communication line network so that more trains can come. Presently, we are not able, to have regular traffic between Lagos and Kano because the side lanes have not been completed and the communication network. Already we have awarded contract for this about 4 weeks ago and work is already going on. So that by the end of the year, we expect many more train services to move between the northwest and the southwest. In the meantime, the minister has again given us the assurance that by the first quarter of next year, we will complete the rehabilitation of the Port Harcourt-Maiduguri rail line. So that what is happening between Lagos and Kano will also begin to happen between the southeast, north central, and northeast. So we will have regular train services going on this line, including the haulage of products. The major thing about the railway is not just the transport of persons, but really the haulage of goods. I give you an example. Recently, between Makurdi and Otukpo, you know, we are building a big dam in Otukpo. Now, we used to carry all the laterite by trailers between Makurdi and Otukpo. Now, because the rail line there is now working between that section, the company is now transporting laterite. About 100,000 metric tons of laterite has been transported by rail between Makurdi and Otukpo. Now, this is the kind of progress. If you were to carry that by road, I can tell you that the stretch between Makurdi and Otukpo will be completely disorganized. So, a lot of things are happening in the rail sector. We are also commissioning new coaches. About 4 new coaches were commissioned last week when the minister launched the haulage of goods between Lagos and Kano. Now we are manufacturing more coaches, and they will be commissioned between now and next year to make sure that the old trains that are now working on this line will be changed so that passengers can have more comfort. Passengers will have more comfort as these new trains arrive. So the progress in the rail system is such that we have not seen for a very, very long time. In the meantime, our consultants are almost completing the designs of the remaining stretches of the standard gauge, which will link up Ibadan all the way to Abuja, and then the one to Kano. The one to the southeast, all the designs are being done. This time around, we ensure that it will be private sector driven. Nigeria is a big population country. You cannot lose when you invest in the railways because it moves hundreds of thousands of people weekly. So this is what we are witnessing between Lagos and Ogun. Within Lagos, we have about 16 trains working daily in Lagos. 16 trains move, between different parts of Lagos up to Abeokuta on a daily basis. This is to ensure that we lower the pressure on the population as far as passenger traffic is concerned. We're also doing the same in Kano. The short lines between Zaria and Kaduna, also between Kaduna and Kano. We have more trains also in Kano City that are working daily to pick passengers to different parts of the city. And these are developments that are going on that Nigeria almost forgot for a long time. So our investment in the rail system is paying off, and the president remains focused. And the Minister of Transport, we are working very hard to complete all the projects on schedule. Now, why do we emphasize transportation? Because if an economy is growing and you do not invest in the movement of goods and services, it becomes very difficult to sustain economic growth because people and goods must move very fast between different sections of society to meet the needs of people. Now, in the transport sector, you will witness also that the improvement in the road construction sector is also going on. As we told you during the ministerial platform, in 2012-2011, we completed about 32 roads. We are increasing the pace of road construction in the country. We want to make sure that we complete the Kano-Maiduguri Expressway, we complete the Abuja-Lokoja Expressway, we complete the Benin-Ore Expressway. That one is virtually completed already. We want to ensure that these artery roads are put in good condition to speed up economic growth. Only last week, we awarded the contract for the second phase of the Apapa-Oshodi Expressway in Lagos to make sure that that major artery road that picks up goods from the seaport for transport within and out of Nigeria is fixed. We have done the first phase. We are now constructing the second phase. We are fixing that. We also just awarded the contract for the complete check on the Third Mainland Bridge in Lagos. Now, this contract which we awarded is going to give us the integrity check on that bridge, complete survey to ensure we know everything about the bridge so that we can continue to maintain it and keep it in optimum condition. We had earlier repaired the back section of that bridge and it is now open to traffic. But we believe that our bridges, we must have regular conduct of checks on them, integrity checks on them, so that we will not be taken by surprise. And the Third Mainland Bridge is one of the nation, is in fact the prime bridge in the country, and is at the nerve center of traffic in Lagos. So we believe that that bridge must be optimally maintained, and that is why we are undergoing this regular integrity check on the bridge. So we are doing a lot in the road construction area. Now, if you go to the air transportation sector, that one is where we have witnessed the fastest growth in recent times. Now, the president promised the Southeast that we'll give them an international airport. That has been done. You all had the report that Enugu Akanu Ibiam International Airport in Enugu is now open to international traffic. Last week, Ethiopian Airlines flew from there out of the country. And so other flights are now becoming regular in the Southeast. Now, it is significant to us because, as you do know, the Igbos are commercial people. They are traders. Wherever you go in this world, you will find an Igbo man engaged in commerce. But unfortunately, since 1960, they never had an international airport. If an Igbo man is traveling from Anambra to South Korea, he has to go through Port Harcourt or Lagos. If he's going to Dubai, he has to either come to Abuja or go to Calabar. Within the southeast of Nigeria, there was never an international airport. And it is the only zone in the country. For whatever reasons, the southeast was the only geopolitical zone in this nation that never had an international airport since 1960. So we felt that both from the point of view of equity in the Nigerian Federation, the Southeast needed an international airport. But even more so, to increase commerce, to increase the growth of the economy in the Southeast and in Nigeria, the president believed there was a need to give them an international airport, and that has already taken place. And I can tell you that you will see the impact of that airport. We're already building a new international terminal for the airport. The contract, the president already laid the foundation stone while commissioning the refurbished airport, as it were. In order to take advantage of that airport, we have also just recently established a free trade zone at the 9th mile area of Enugu. Now that free trade zone, combined with the international airport in Enugu, and of course the dredging of the Niger with a seaport in Onitsha, is going to turn the Southeast in the foreseeable future into an economic hub. The Igbos are industrialists. We expect that we should transform that area into our own Taiwan. Because if a region of this country grows, it is Nigeria that is growing. So we must make things easier for people that are prepared to put in their money to invest. And in the Southeast, we have witnessed the gradual rise in the number of factories. This is what we want to do for every part of the country. Now, I will also give you another information. Because of the vision of the president to grow the non-oil sector, the Bank of Industry has been giving special loans to facilitate some big factories in the country. Now, 2 of those factories are the Innoson Motor Manufacturing Plant at Nnewi and Innoson Technica located in Enugu. The money Innoson is using to keep those factories afloat comes from Bank of Industry. It's a loan at special concessionary rate to make sure that our industrialists, those who really want to grow the economy, have the opportunity. Now today, as you notice, we are not buying vehicles that Innoson manufactures out of the country. Any vehicle that Innoson manufactures, we buy from him. I told you that recently the National Population Commission wanted to buy some jeeps from abroad. When they brought it to the Federal Executive Council, the president asked, are we not producing these vehicles in Nigeria? The report from the Minister of Trade and Investment was that these vehicles are now produced at Nnewi in Nigeria. So we confirmed and we stepped down the memo and directed that all those vehicles should be bought from Nnewi, made in Nigeria from scratch to finish. That is what is going on now. So also, Innoson Technica manufactures every type of plastic you can think of. Ceiling, dashboards of motorcycles, of vehicles, anything plastic is manufactured. And what we noticed was that he has orders from South Africa, from out of the country. And he employs more than 4,000 workers in that factory. So it is in our interest to sustain people like this who are adding value to the Nigerian economy. But within this period, apart from Innoson, we are now building cold steel plants in Ogun State that have come on stream. We are manufacturing a lot of steel. Production is continuously going up, and we are now beginning to export out of this country. Now, these are developments in the economy that surely will anyone who is acquired, out of keep politics aside, anybody who is observing really the progress on the transformation agenda, progress in industry, progress in agriculture, progress in commerce, you will see very clearly that the Nigerian economy is moving in the right direction. This is what we want, and we will continue to keep our eye on the economy. That's what the president says. There will be no turning of attention away at all. No matter the heat in the polity, our attention is in the economy. One big progress we have made is that we have now virtually succeeded in privatizing the power sector. Let me tell you, even though we just recently completed 7 new power plants out of the 10 we are building, 7 are now ready out of the 10 we are building. Even though we have completed 7 new power plants now, remaining 3 to go, and even though we have completed 150 injection substations out of 220, and the rest work is going on, very, very fast. In spite of this is not what is giving us hope in the power sector. What is giving us hope is that we are now removing the ineptitude of the bureaucracy of government from the power sector through privatization and deregulation. That is the hope in the power sector. Now, we have bidded all the 10 new power plants, and people are now paying for them, in addition to the old plants. So both the generating and distribution companies are now going to the private sector. All the companies that bidded, most of them have already paid in their money, their deposits. So these are now being handed over to them, and they will now run them as businesses. That is the most important thing. Power will no longer be run by government bureaucrats who will give us darkness and earn their salary. It's no longer going to be so. It is now going to the private sector. If you generate, you earn money. If you don't generate, you lose your investment. And so they will make sure that they generate and give you power, because all that is going to happen will be prepaid meters. All these companies are going to distribute prepaid meters. So as power comes, you pay. If power does not come, nobody charges you. This was not the case in the years we saw in the past. So what has gone on in telecoms, and that's the point the president was making when he addressed the nation through the PDP convention last Saturday, that the power sector, the revolution that took place in telecoms, is surely now getting set to take place in the power sector. With these private companies taking charge all over the country with government support, because that doesn't mean that government is walking away from power. No, we are going to invest more in power, but we will invest now in partnership with private companies whose duty, whose business, whose expertise is in generating and distributing power for profit. In addition to this, the Chinese company has already shown interest and signed a memorandum of understanding to build a 20,000 megawatts coal power plant here in Nigeria. They are going to generate 20,000 megawatts of electricity, and they are building 10,000 kilometers of transmission lines. This is purely from private capital. Now, because of the interest in the economy, the Chinese are investing more. They're investing in the railways. They are now moving also to invest in power because of the regulation policy. So the point I'm making here is, in the past, when we had problem in the economy, the idea was that what more can government do? Now, whatever government can do today will fall short of the demands of this economy. All those deficits we used to sing about inadequate power supply, weak infrastructure, and so on. What the transformation agenda of Mr. President has done in the last 3 years is to learn from the Chinese example of 1978. If you have a deficit in your economy and you have a large market and you have a potential, creative policy can translate the deficit into investment opportunity. And that is what we are doing. We had deficit in power. Before now, we thought only government would do it. Because of the change in direction and policy, that deficit is now bringing a lot of money into Nigeria for people who want to invest to generate power for profit. Just like we had deficit in telecoms, in telephony, 450 analog lines for 100 million people. We decided no, we can't go on this way. We changed that. We withdrew government. We deregulated the sector. And what has happened was that from 415 analog lines, we now have 100 million mobile lines where Nigerians everywhere in the villages, in the cities, can now talk to anybody in the world. They no longer need to go and line up behind NITEL and pay bribe for your line to be restored. Now that's what is going to happen also in the power sector. So with these revolutionary measures that the president has taken, the economy is growing faster and faster, and more confidence is restored in the Nigerian economy. Now, I will tell you that as we move on beyond this year, Nigerians are going to see more results. More results will come because we have done the right things, we have done the right policy formulation, the right policy framework, and more people are coming into the economy and they are giving us results. Jobs will be created and jobs are being created. Jobs are being created daily through the private sector. And we will be taking stock of this development. Like when Dangote launches 3.3 billion investment, just imagine the number of people that are going to be employed because it's going to be in Nigeria. We told you that we're already employing 100,000 just for the Ogidingbi Petrochemical Complex. When General Electric is now started constructing its own plant in Calabar, $1 billion to produce turbines which we used to import. They will not be producing in Nigeria. Why are they producing turbines now? Because our electricity policy is now in tune with the global practice. Not only General Electric, recently Siemens has also started a factory in Lagos to manufacture medium-sized turbines for the electricity, for the power sector. And again, General Electric is also setting up its own factory here in Nigeria to manufacture turbines for the power sector. They are doing so because the wrong policies of the past have changed. They now see hope. They see sustainable economic regulation and growth. They see a large market. They see opportunities. They see factories coming up. So they are now investing because there is profit to be made in the Nigerian economy. And the world will come here. The world is coming here. That is the hope that we have in this president, and particularly in the policies that we're implementing, across the country. Now, talking about airports, apart from the improvement that we have seen, the real area that people don't see are in the area of safety. The area of safety, because the emphasis now is not only to our beautiful airports. If you have beautiful airports and you have no safety equipment, it does not work out. There's no confidence in it. Like we said, recently the ministry ordered, the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority ordered every airline to put automatic flight information systems in all planes in Nigeria, so that every plane in Nigeria, whether on ground or on air, can read the situation. Technical situation of that plane will be clearly visible to the pilot. The weather report will be clearly visible between where you take off and where you are landing. So we have brought aviation landing, aviation safety equipment in the Nigerian airspace at par with what is happening in most parts of the world. So we have reached safety standards now. In Abuja, we have provided alternative power for the traffic lighting system at the runway, so that permanently those runways will be lighted, no matter the situation we face. So that is what is going on. So we want to invite the attention of Nigerians, particularly to the President's Economic Transformation Program, And we want them to have confidence in this economy. The stock exchange, the capital market, is an area that has drawn in a lot of investments from abroad. Because of the reforms we had in the market, and because of the stable management of that market, the boom is back and people are making money again in the Nigerian capital market. This is something significant because the health of the capital market is the health of any modern economy. Today, our own is healthy. We have come back from the collapse of the last 3-4 years back onto a market that is now making profit. This is what we want. And we want Nigerians to participate, to invest. Because our investment culture is still very low. That is the problem. Our investment culture in this country is still very, very low. We are not investing. You don't have to have 1 million naira to invest. People can invest 5,000 naira. It will generate another 10,000 naira next year. People can invest 50,000 naira and become billionaires. No amount of money is too small for investment. What is most important is the consciousness that your earning is not only for today. You can put something. You can buy shares. You can establish a small company that is making a particular, supplying to a particular company or a construction company. There are so many things going on in the economy, and we need to make sure that we do something. In the housing sector, last year we told you we built about 16,447 houses across the country. Now, some of them from private companies, some of them from government, but it's all facilitated by government. But the report I want to give is in the creation of a new mortgage industry for the country. We have secured 300 million IDA loan, working with the Central Bank of Nigeria and the World Bank. We want to establish a coherent, stable mortgage finance system for the housing sector. Now, this is the only way you will have confidence from private people who want to build their houses. The problem in the past was that our mortgage industry was absolutely almost not there. Apart from the Federal Mortgage Bank, which really works more with the public servants to, build houses, the real sector was depending on commercial banks, and you can't borrow money from commercial banks for mortgage industry. It's not going to be possible. So the president is now filling the gap. Very soon, this will be established, and once we get the mortgage financing system correct, there will be a boom in housing in both the rural and public area. In the rural and urban areas, particularly with the new policy on housing, which we recently unveiled to the country. So that sector is set for a boom, and we have a lot of housing deficit. What we want to do is to translate every deficit. Human capital development is the foundation of any economy. Investments flow will increase as experts that are required to work in new factory lines increase in the country. And so, recently, after our ministerial platform, the federal government put aside 100 billion naira for infrastructure in the universities. 100 billion. That money has already been set aside, and this is different from the regular budget. This is different from the money pouring in from Tertiary Education Trust Fund. This is different from the money pouring in from Petroleum Technology Trust Fund, PTDF. This is also different from the money flowing in from the NCC and Universal Service Provision Fund. All these institutions are putting money in higher education. All these institutions. Those of you who went on the National Good Governance tour, you saw what was happening in the universities. In the University of Benin, as I continue to repeat, we saw nearly over 38 new projects completed, including a new Senate auditorium for the university, lecture theaters, education, a network of faculties that have been built through TED Fund and other financial institutions. We saw it. We went to Archie Polytechnic. We saw over 20 new projects completed in Archie Polytechnic. We went to, KB. We saw that polytechnics are being, particularly the workshops of polytechnics across the country, we are replenishing them with 15 billion naira. So we're changing equipment, the learning facilities in all the polytechnics in the country who are doing so, for both federal and state polytechnics. So we're investing in education as never before, so that this funding comes from different sources. And what we want is to make sure that at all times we are putting something new in the universities. Because in the last 20, 30 years, let me tell you, the universities really came down. Infrastructure, all of us who schooled abroad, we schooled in Nigeria, we didn't go abroad. For those of us who are trained here in our universities, we appreciate it. All of us, the president, all of us, we trained here. We didn't go abroad. We all had our university education in Nigeria. And the competencies we give in our service to the nation, we got from domestic training. No country, what is sought, will want its citizens to be trained abroad. Yes, we can't stop our citizens from going abroad, those who have the extra money to spend, but our universities must be in proper order to make sure that the average Nigerian child has the opportunity within his country to train to the highest level. But unfortunately, over decades, we had the rot in the educational system. That rot was not by this government. That rot has gone on for a long time because of inadequate funding, because of wrong policies. Today, the president is fixing his attention in education far more than on any other thing that he's working on. We have established 12 new universities, 9 have taken off, students have been matriculated. Some are now in the second year. The idea is also to expand access. People say, why new universities? Because even now, we are not yet able to meet the access of children who want to go to university. We are not even getting up to 50% of those who are qualified to go for university education. So we need more access. And that's why the president established 12 new universities. We will not see the world today, but as we move on, people are going, apart from the jobs they have already created for a number of people, in the society. We are now talking of fresh new opportunities for people to go to school in Nigeria. So those new universities are on and they are moving on. But our investment now is to make sure that the report of ASU, the joint report of ASU and NUC, which studied the infrastructure gap in the universities, was submitted to the government. And the president is determined to ensure that we meet the need of infrastructure in the universities. We have a lot of challenges. Unfortunately, we have challenges in railways, we have challenges in our waterway transportation, challenges in road construction, challenges in agriculture, challenges in aviation. Every sector that we have looked at, in power sector, we have challenges. And the president has to make sure that we share resources and allocate resources to ensure that every sector is being placed in a position to move forward. We will want to give more money to education, and we have been giving more money to education than any other sectors in the president coming. But this additional funding that is coming in is to address the specific rot that we saw in that report. So 100 billion has been set aside in the first instance, and I believe more money is going to come. So we appeal to Nigerians to understand our predicament at this time. Unfortunately, look at what we have spent fighting insecurity. We have spent hundreds and hundreds of billions of naira. If there was no trouble for this president and we poured that money in the university system, in the educational system, nobody will be crying today. Nobody will be crying today. But we have had to spend so much more money, sometimes on security than even education. So we are calling on our people, give peace a chance. So those are challenges the president continues to face. But in spite of these challenges, we believe education is our #1 priority. And we will continue to fund education, increase the capacity of institutions that are giving money to give more money. And as we generate more tax revenue, because the economy is growing, more money will be available to government to fund education. More money will be available to fund education. So in the meantime, we need an understanding. We need an understanding, because when ASU down tools, we were very worried. We do not want our university to close for one day. One day, because when you close the university, the cost can be calculated. And we have been working to and fro with the unions to make sure that our universities reopen. And government, just about 2 weeks ago, gave 30 billion on ground, put 30 billion naira aside for the various governing councils of the universities to begin to pay some of the allowances that the union, the academic staff union of universities, down tools because they were not paid. So this is going on. Our hope, and we still pray, that there will be greater understanding and that our universities will open as quickly as possible so that our children can go back to school. In the meantime, our commitment is to continue to put in more money to address the specific deficit in the university system, and that is already ongoing. In the level of primary and secondary education, you all are aware that in the last academic session, we have had improvement in performances because of the previous years of investment by this government. We had about 62% pass rate, minimum 5 credit pass by students last year in WAEC. That up from 39% the previous year. That is a big boost. Now we are going to work harder to increase performances by providing learning facilities. We're already providing textbooks to all junior secondary schools so that children will have books, because in most public schools you have the challenge of even textbooks in classes. When we were in secondary school, we had textbooks supplied. Every child had every textbook. We want that to come back, and we're setting aside money. You know, recently we awarded contract again to supply books for the rest of the stream of primary schools and junior secondary schools across the country. We hope that in the next academic session, every book required by students in our primary schools, in our junior secondary schools, they will get them. Supplied by government. Free, not to be sold. This is being done across the country. Now we want to increase the potential of our students. If learning facilities are available, it is easier for them to learn. This in addition to computer in schools. The school access program, both by the USPF and NCC, is going on. We are putting computers in schools every year. We take them in batches. We take them in batches in all the 36 states and the FCT to increase access to ICT by our students. This is being done mainly by the Ministry of Communication Technology. This is very, very important for our educational system, and this is going on. So we have also put new learning platforms in 12 universities so that students can learn online, can access any library in the world, go online, get the information you require. So a lot of improvements will come. I know we still need much more money in the universities and in the educational system. Much more money will come. But as a government, we have to share priorities. If we do not share priorities and put the whole money we earn in one sector, then again, other sectors collapse, and that sector ultimately will not make progress. So we are investing in all areas, but education is our #1 priority. Now, let me say that in the area of security, we continue to invest. The state of emergency, which was proclaimed by Mr. President about 3 months ago in the 3 states of Yobe, Borno, and Adamawa, have yielded results. We have most public institutions that were closed down in Borno State particularly, and in Yobe have been restored. Normalcy has returned to much of Maiduguri metropolis, to the extent that this year the Durbar was staged during Salah in Borno State, which was the first time in 4 years because of insecurity. But this year, because of the relative return of calm, they staged the Durbar there. Even in Zaria, where it was suspended, the Durbar was again staged. Now, I can say that the military, the security services have done a great job in the area. There are still challenges. It is not expected that because they went in 1 month, everything will go quiet. No, we are not fighting an enemy that is open. We are fighting a very difficult enemy that has melded into the population. So finding that enemy sometimes will take quite some time. There will still be surprises here and there as this effort by security forces go on. But what we have seen the defense headquarters do in recent times is that they have also upgraded the game in that area. They have now established a whole new division for the northeast of Nigeria. So the firefighting measure that government was doing through the JTF, Joint Task Force, which is actually supposed to be not a permanent measure. Because Joint Task Force is a firefighting measure. You go in, there is a problem, you deal with it, and you pull back. But because of the spread of crisis in the area, what the Defense Headquarters has done is to establish a whole full military division, which will now settle down and take charge of security in the whole northeast of Nigeria, in all the of the northeast of Nigeria. So that those measures tell you clearly that government is indeed moving higher in terms of security. We still have problems, particularly at the Cameroon border. We still have a lot of problems there at the Cameroon border. We had an international force made up of the countries in that zone to continue to fight insecurity and criminality, across boundary. And it is still a developing process, but I can tell you that with Niger, we have had a lot of cooperation, and the forces are really cooperating, and we are reducing the incidence of flow of terror groups, across the boundary. Even with Chad, we are doing a lot much more work. With Cameroon too, we have a lot of cooperation, but we still have challenges, because that is where we have much of the weak link of people moving in and moving out. Even Shekau, that is where he escaped through when he was shot recently by security forces. So that is an area now that we are also concentrating on. Now, the moment we are able to secure properly the Cameroon border, it will reduce the inflow of elements in and out of the country. Also, the inflow of arms, of firearms, which is indeed one of the biggest problems we have in all the trouble spots in the country. But I can tell you that security is number one on the president's agenda, and gradually normalcy is returning. You still have isolated attacks, particularly in vulnerable areas, in the rural areas. But what has happened is that as the citizens become hot for these terror groups, they are moving out to operate in rural areas. But as the division there is established and set shop in the key places across the region, even that will be content. But we ask Nigerians to be patient. But I want to pay tribute to the citizens of Nigeria in the Northeast for the cooperation they have given security forces in dealing with insurgency there. You keep hearing of civilian JTF. I can tell you that without them, a lot of the successes that have been scored in recent months would not have been possible. And that is the point I have been making all along, that you cannot fight insecurity without citizens' cooperation. And we want that cooperation extended to all parts of Nigeria. My people have an adage that in every community, they know their wizards, they know their witches, they know their tough guys. And if you go, they can point them to you. Now, in the past, you could go on. But today in Nigeria, it is very dangerous for any community to hide anything that is going to affect you in future. Anybody who is going to cause trouble for your community, it is in your interest to reveal that person as quickly as possible before he sets fire on your town, before he sets fire on your village. So cooperation with security forces has become a must for all communities in the country. Recently, I was happy when I listened to the Emir of Zaria during the last Salah, saying, look, if somebody comes to Zaria and he wants a new house, a new tenant, please find out more about who he is or who she is. Who is this new tenant that is taken up, that has come to live with us? Have you gotten all reports about him? And have you reported to the police, to the immigration, so that we will know that there is a new tenant in town, this is where he's staying? We didn't have security consciousness in the past. We took everything for granted in Nigeria. Anybody can come in and go out, it didn't matter. But it has never been so with our neighboring countries. You can't go to Cameroon and come out. They will know who has come in. They will report you, they will monitor you. You can't go to Benin Republic. The moment you enter the border, you are being monitored. Citizens will watch you. They will report everything you are doing. But in Nigeria, our borders were like anybody can flow in and flow out. Now we have seen the cost of this nonchalance, and we need more awareness, more cooperation, more sensitivity. Please try to report, try to monitor, try to cooperate for your own safety and for the safety of your own community. So a lot of effort is being done in this, and I want to really commend our security forces, our services, the army, the air force, the immigration, the police, the navy, all of them. They are doing a great job for this country, and we need to commend them. A number of them have lost their lives in the course of these operations. This nation stands by them and their families. We are truly very proud of them, and Nigeria is undergoing these operations without any external involvement, because our armed forces have developed the needed capacity to deal with these issues. What they require is the cooperation and prayers of all citizens, so that they will succeed in keeping our country safe for all citizens. Without that, economic growth is not sustainable in most of the places that have been affected by insecurity. We have also had cooperation from different levels of government in dealing with this insecurity. So when we work together, we can truly, really bring solutions to problems. That's exactly what is required to keep our country safe and to give honor to the integrity of our national boundaries. That is what we want. So I want to really welcome all of you to this briefing and to tell you that we are prepared to engage you, like I say, from time to time on all issues relating to the developments in the country. And I will continue to take questions if you have questions. But like I say, it's a monthly affair, and we will be doing this every month to bring you new developments and to see what we can do together for our country. I thank you for your attention.
We want to thank the Honorable Minister of Information for the appraisal to Nigerians. Can we please put our hands together, ladies and gentlemen, once more for the Honorable Minister. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, as you are already aware, this program is live, and Mr. Eric is not asking a question, rather he is saying, Honorable Minister of Information, the transformation agenda on the RISE program is real. As I'm watching you on the television, my community is receiving 40 tons of improved rice seedlings from the federal government under the National Food Security Program. Not only that, Minister, I want to tell you that I have just completed the building of a small rice factory within my community, which is being grant-aided by the federal government. In addition to that, Honorable Minister, the Minister of Power has just sent distribution transformers to our rice mill, free of charge, and we are really grateful. Please encourage the government to continue in that fold. So, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, one other question that is coming from the public is this. Honorable Minister of Information, the federal government has been talking about 13 proposed perishable terminals that will be delivered by December. What are these perishable terminals meant to achieve? Is it that the terminals will be built and after people have used it, it perishes? Please explain to us. Again, still on the aviation sector, this one is saying, yes, we've heard about remodeling of airports. Is federal government doing anything to forestall runaway incursions at our airports by stowaways? Then on the power sector, the president of the Electricity Allied Companies Workers Senior Staff Association said that recently that privatization won't solve Nigeria's power problem. What do you have to say on this? Privatization won't solve Nigerians' power problem. What do you have to say about that? Then another one is saying, Minister, you have been talking of an improved economy. Is it true that Nigeria is broke? We have had complaints from our parents that salaries have not been paid. Please comment on that. Another one states this way. A legal luminary few days ago said that the Jonathan's transformation agenda is weak. What is your take on that, Honorable Minister? Jonathan's transformation agenda is weak. What is your take on that? So, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, that's about the questions from my own side. May I now call on members of the public, the press that are here, who have any questions that they want to throw at the minister, to indicate by showing their hands up. Come forward, tell us your name, the organization you represent, and thereafter you ask your question. Thank you.
You're not hitting the nail on the head. We have a pending issue in Nigeria, which all of us know. I think it would be nice if you talk about the political state in Nigeria. People want to know what is happening in our politics. You will agree with me that if there is no peace in our political life, there will be no progress in Nigeria. So I think you should talk to Nigerians on politics. Thank you.
Okay, next.
Honorable Minister, my name is Ike Obadi. I work for African Waves magazine.
Speak louder, please.
My name is Ike Obadi. I work for African Waves magazine. Honorable Minister, my question goes on education. When you are talking about education, you didn't mention about Almajiris. I know the administration has done a lot well in Almajiris. So I want to know more further on Almajiris. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. We are enthused by your very detailed report. And once again, one can attest to the fact that there's tremendous efforts being made by government. My concern is, my name is Pastor Jason Moore. I'm National President, Youth Organization for Unity and Total Harmony of Society, civil society organization. Now, Honorable Minister, sir, you see, we can be sincere and making sincere efforts in critical situations like this, but in the wrong directions. Take, for instance, the two prominent issues that really affect us. One is the issue of education. A whole lot of funds has been expended and sources of all kinds in infrastructure, provision of infrastructure. But like General Magoro told us a couple of days ago, the most important asset of any nation is its human capital. No matter how much we invest in funding education and providing infrastructure in the educational sector, if we don't take time and stop to consider the welfare of the students and the lecturers that will use those infrastructures as top priority, we'll be wasting time. What ASU is saying borders on their welfare. And they told us that they have an agreement with the federal government that was prior to the budget preparation. One wonders, therefore, why is it difficult for government to capture the financial implications of that contract in the national budget? Now, and if it was captured and the funds collected from the foundation account, why would a certain negligible percentage be released? And where is the rest? Now, secondly, we are looking at the issue of how much we've been investing on security. My concern is that some people somewhere may not even be interested in having this war end because of financial gains. Why do I say so? Not too long ago, we were shocked by everybody here. We were all shocked to hear that Shekau had been or may have been killed. And we are aware that in a war, coming as a pastor, I know that when the children of Israel were facing a Goliath like we are facing right now, a young man came out and said, what is the reward for exceptional gallantry? If you tell me the reward for exceptional gallantry, I will behead this bastard that is, damning the army of the Lord. Now, the nation has not offered any such reward for exceptional gallantry. An external nation who is sympathetic, United States, offered $23 million as reward for exceptional gallantry. And somebody now says that the man on whose head the reward was put is dead. Who is the hero that killed him? Where is his corpse? And when will we reward the hero? Because why we celebrate the Super Eagles for kicking a few leather around. But people are putting down their life daily. And they're not appreciated to that point. And then we quarreled over this issue, and we saw that the change in style of leadership of the defense headquarters. So the CDS visited the wounded in the hospital. We congratulated him for it. They buried the dead with honor. We congratulated them for it. But we want to see the administration, and we are watching very key. How is the reward for exceptional gallantry going to be administered? Because it is key to the ending of this war.
Thank you. Please be brief and straight to the point.
Honorable Minister, members of the High Table, my name is Azariah Kucha. I report for Radio Nigeria. Honorable Minister, I'll pick you on the area of education. Honorable Minister, a school of thought has it that places like Ghana, and with what is happening with the ASU strike, this is the 3rd month, people believe because their children are not in these public institutions, they can afford to allow this strike to be prolonged. So what have you to say about this? That is one. 2, talking about providing free textbooks. I come from a village where the community built a primary school through the missionaries over 60 years ago, as our parents told us. Now this primary school, as it is today, with free textbooks, there are no teachers. That same community built a community secondary school some 30 years ago. As I'm talking with you, there are no teachers. Now in the foundation, now as it is, the foundation is already weak. You have the books, but the teachers are just not there. How is the government, or how are we addressing this if we must address the falling standard of education in the country? And finally, sir, are there any plans to have a policy where people are compelled, to send their children to public schools? Perhaps if their children are in these public schools, will not experience what we are experiencing now. Thank you.
Okay, so far, I'm interested in the power sector, and there is no doubt that this government has demonstrated will to liberalize the sector. And I know that liberalization, the company is being given an extension instead of following the rule, which is to invite the reserve bidder. I want to find out, is this not going to tell on the integrity of the process? And even when the company is handed over to an incompetent company, a company that demonstrated the lack of capacity to manage that distribution company. Thank you.
By this administration to ensure employment generation, there's still a worrying rate of unemployment. What more can be done? And secondly, in the troubled states of Yobe, Adamawa, and Borno to be specific, the JTF are up. The civilian JTF now are trying to make sure that the effort of the military forces there, achieve peace. Do we have a database for these civilian JTF to be able to appreciate their efforts? Thank you.
Nyema Kono Ogbe, I work for Dark Communications PLC, operators of AIT, Ray Power, and DASAT. I'll have two questions, but since I've been restricted to just one question, I would like to, and one of them has been asked on ASU, I would like to ask the Honorable Minister this question on the aviation safety equipment that has been said to have been installed in all the aircraft flying in Nigeria. And when was this directive given? And if they've complied, how come we hear about 60-year-old stowaway in side compartments in aircraft from Benin to Lagos? And this really is a pointer to the fact that some of these airports, though they've been remodeled, are not really safe.
The Honorable Minister, if I want to call him Mr., it doesn't flow. I want to thank you for this briefing, but I looked through when you were addressing all of us. I didn't see you read from a text, which shows that you have gone too far to handle these issues. And like human being you are, I want to think that the area of health was missing in your account. If I wouldn't ask for too much, we heard 2 days ago that Nigeria is free of polio, which is a high point in the health sector. But there is downside on that same health sector. You could also throw more light. I want to also want you and other Nigerians, while we cry for the collapse in education sector, we should raise an alarm to Nigerians who are now running helter-skelter to seek education outside the borders of Nigeria, that what is happening in Benin Republic currently, where about 10,000 Nigerians are seeking anyhow tertiary education, we should be able to mark those schools that are not accredited, that have no courses that can be appreciated when they come back to do youth service in Nigeria, that the danger of running away from Nigerian school system, which is almost in comatose, cannot be quantified by the falsehood of false certificate they will get from Benin Republic. Finally, I want to report. When we went on National Good Governance Tour in January, we saw a group of Nigerian graduates who are into the farm settlement that is called Ada and Farm Rice Settlement. They complained to the team of what they needed, but when we came back, our organization, by the way, I am Maz Chidikuko from NEA Africa, we took up that issue because they are the youths. They are graduates. Some of them have masters. One of them is doing his PhD while we visited the farm. They were in the farm. They said they want to farm and feed Nigeria, don't want to run around. It touched our heart. We followed it up. We don't have to leave it to the minister to do. We took it up from Ministry of Agric. They answered us. From that time till now, we've been following. It is not easy to follow ministries. We know what breakfast is all about. But we dedicated our time, continue to talk to them in the farm, even in the night. But I can report to you today that last week they called to say we have received as rice seedlings. And I think it's a plus from the ministry. While they have done that, they want to even go to the press and say, wait a minute. Did you get the component called fertilizer? They say they are yet to receive. I say, keep it cool. When the fertilizer comes, you can now speak to the public. But I want to say halfway, that is working. Thank you very much.
Okay.
A lot of progress is being done. You just discussed polio. We have upped our campaign, and we believe that we will be able to overcome it. So we are working hard with stakeholders in that area. Our Save a Million Lives, where we are having special programs for maternity and child care, is working across the country with a lot of people employed, throughout the country, to ensure that even in the most rural of areas, we save women in labor, we save children, at birth. So we're training people, you know, all over the country. Midwives are being employed by the federal government in addition to state infrastructures, in addition to what we are doing with MDGs. So a lot of work is going on in the health sector. We have a lot going on in health, and I'm sure we'll take them in the next press conference so that we do not go back all again to repeat this press conference. I believe we have stayed a very long time for today. Now, salaries. Is Nigeria broke? Surely Nigeria is not broke, you know that. Nigeria is surely not broke. We have about 45 billion in foreign reserves. Such a nation cannot be pronounced as broke. Instead, our reserves are growing. The stability in the economy is because the reserves are growing. There is confidence in the economy. That's why people are coming in to invest. So I can tell you certainly that Nigeria is not broke. Now, I know once salaries are not paid, maybe we are used to regular payment of salaries, so this month I know there will be complaints. You know, so that question maybe was asked within the hall. It didn't come from outside. Which is understandable. And I can tell you that while doing that, the DGFRCN just gave me a note that he has just got an alarm that the salary has hit his account. And several other people say that they have got alerts. How many of you got alert in the hall? So you see, so this. Let me tell you, I wanted to confirm whether the DGFSN is just saying it to please me, but I can see many hands are up. So that your salaries are streaming all to your accounts. We're doing a new payment system. Sometimes there are unusual delays because we are checking to ensure that those ghosts that we used to pay, those ghosts that have taken billions from public sector, particularly the federal public sector, we want to make sure that those ghosts stop taking money from our own vaults. And so the system we have put in place, sometimes there are delays, and also for this month, because I was at the airport when the president was traveling to Kenya this morning. The first question he asked was that, I got that, is it true salaries have not been paid? Because he was very furious, and someone said, no, salaries are right now being paid. You know, there were little problems of checks that is being done now. So he said, make sure this does not repeat itself. I don't want to see salaries delayed for 1 week any longer. Anytime you must fix those problems early on. That's the instruction that the president gave at the airport before he flew to Kenya this morning. So let me assure you that when salaries are not paid for 1 day, we are worried. We also receive salaries, so it's not only you. We do want our salaries to be paid, especially politicians like us who have so many people waiting on us. It's very true. You know, I can tell you that each time my salary is paid and I see the line of people waiting on it, I know that if it is not paid, I, my family, and a number of people will be in jeopardy. So payment of salary as and when due has been the tradition of this government. So you can be sure that it will not change. So for all federal civil servants, bear with us for this month for the 1 week delay, but this will not recur. The president also gave instruction this morning. I'm sure that everyone who is responsible is doing that. You know, our ministry has been, the Minister of Finance particularly, has done a lot of great job checking on our salaries. We have saved a lot of money that usually went into black holes in the salary system, which is really very unfortunate. It is we who are responsible. We want honesty, want accountability. We talk of corruption, and when we have the opportunity to be honest, we are not. So it's very, very sad. It's very, very, very sad. So please, let us sit and be counted on the honor list. If we are honest, we shouldn't have ghosts on the salary list. There should be nothing like that. So we who are the workers should check it out. Just like we have civilian JTF, we should also have within our ministries civilian informers or honorable people who will tell us when things are wrong, so that we can stop some of the rubbish that goes on with a lot of cost to the economy. We need that kind of thing. We need to cooperate. We need a moral revolution in the public service. This will enable us not only to make sure that our money flows into the accounts of those who deserve payments, but that we can save a lot of money for the economy. If the economy does not grow, civil servant salaries alone will not make jobs to grow. We are paid to work for people. So today we are getting our payment. If the economy does not grow, if farmers do not get their fertilizers, if the roads do not work, we have no reason to be public servants. So on salary, I can assure you that there is no reason for us to delay, and government always has enough money to pay your salaries. Now, a question was asked about terminals, perishable terminals. Now, I can tell you that the terminals we are talking about, perishable terminals, are new cargo terminals that will transport perishable products like vegetables and flour and fruits out of the country. So we have designed these terminals in different airports. They include Jos, Ilorin, Makurdi, Lagos, Port Harcourt, Asaba. You know, they are all located in strategic zones where perishable products are produced in large quantity. So that is what we call perishable terminals. They are not as described by Peter or the person who asked the question. So we are developing this because as we put more emphasis on agriculture, we are seeing that a lot of growth is. Look at Kano. Kano is moving into real, production of vegetables, onions. We went to Kebbi. You saw the onions international market I think at Alero. You saw it. How people come from all over West Africa to buy onions. And Kebbi alone airport to make sure that we monitor all movements in the airports. I know because of what happened in Benin, a number of people who are all worried. But sometimes things happen for us to be alert and to test your systems. But that is not to say that our airports are not safe. So we're increasing. Sometimes they are simply human factors. Sometimes they are just human factors. Some people may not be very alert. Technology alone does not give you all the results. So you must be very, very alert to your responsibility. Even if you are watching a camera, you take your eyes off it for a second, something could happen. So this country, we have this problem of lack of focus. Our focus, our lack system, our capacity to stay focused, sometimes because something has not happened for 6 hours, we just leave our duty post and nothing will happen. After all, throughout last week, nothing happened. No. There must be 24. The idea is prevention, not for something to happen before you come back to your duty post. So, both in terms of the human factor, training, commitment, consistency, seriousness, these are the things we require. But definitely, in terms of security, a lot has gone on, a lot is going on, fencing, special cameras, training, and aviation equipment. The radar, of course, we have 100% radar coverage of our airspace for the first time in our history. So any plane flying in or out of Nigeria, we see clearly on radar. So these are developments, but the human factor is something that we must continue to work on. Because technology alone is not sufficient. The human factor is usually the problem with our systems. You put a proper system in place, you put an efficient technology in place, but the person operating it will simply not be alert. And then something happens. So we are looking into the human factor in terms of training, in terms of responsibility, in terms of reward and punishment. So that when things go wrong, because somebody simply didn't do his or her job, that person should be exemplarily punished. And those who do well should be encouraged. That is what we are doing. But definitely a lot has gone on in that area. Electricity, privatization is not Nigeria's, is no solution. Electricity Workers Union. Well, there is no one solution to any problem in the world. There is no single policy that becomes a solution for all times. So we are not saying that privatization is the only solution to the electricity problem in Nigeria or even to the problem of the Nigerian economy. But we have found it as a sustainable solution because we have tried government control since 1960 in the power sector. It has not grown. So we are not trying privatization as a first option. Our first option in Nigeria was that we even legislated that power will only be generated and sold by government. Power was one of the commanding heights of the economy. The telecoms were one other area. We said only government would do it. Since 1960 until 2001, nobody had a right, even if you had your money, to establish a private telecom company in Nigeria. it was all government. The difficulty we have had with government control is that our state has not been a very efficient state when it comes to discipline of public officers, when it comes to discipline of public workers, when it comes to commitment of public sector workers. So the governance deficit in the public sector ensure that over this period of time, all the huge investments we poured in by government, Nigerian shipping lines, Nigerian Airways, and NITEL, all those companies, the fertilizer company, all of them were built by government and were run by government, but they were all run aground. They were all run aground. They stopped working. Nigerian Railway Corporation, everything collapsed, the train stopped. So we are compelled to do what we are doing now because we have tried the public sector for more than 50 years. Unfortunately, you and I have not exercised the discipline to ensure that the Nigerian people get the benefit we put in public sector management, in public sector companies. They haven't worked. And I can tell you, I was one of the people believing that government must control these areas. But the reality today is that we must look back with regret that a number of those investments went down the drain. Most of the time, for all the period of military rule, for example, you are not in control of who will stage a coup. You are not in control of who will become governor. You are not in control, you are not elected. And over this period, and even in a democratic system, you find that some people get chose by patronage. Maybe you have somebody who works so well in the election and you nominate this person for this. Some of those people will be appointed. So in public sector appointments, there are political considerations. But when you want to run things that will generate services to people, you must use economic terms of competence, of merit alone. In political appointments, merit is combined with fair spread, for example, of appointments. If you want to, for example, appoint a board of governors of FRCN, I'm not going to be able to appoint people from one place. Nigerians will shout, how can you appoint 3 people from one place to run FRCN? Because it is a political thing. But if FRCN, for example, is a private radio station, it's only going to look for those people who deliver services. It's not going to consider politics. And so because politics does not necessarily run in line of economic management, we have gotten this wisdom that is important, especially after we tried cement and it worked. After we tried the telecoms and it worked. Even the Eleme Petrochemicals that we was not working, go there now, they're working 24 hours. They're working 24 hours. So there is something to be gained when government sincerely looks at its incapacity in an area and invite people who are prepared to help to come in. Even now, government is not going to leave power. What we are going to do is to put in our money, but it will be equity. And the management will be done by people who have invested their money, and they will only look at managers that are ready to work 24 hours. So if you don't do your work, you go. But for all this period, if I was working in NEPA, for example, whether Nigeria generated power or not, my promotion will come. I'll continue to raise from one grade level to another. As power comes down, my salaries go up. But nobody is going to do so in these new companies now. Nobody is going to do that in these new companies who are privatizing. If you are not, if the company makes no profit, you have no salary. So you must work hard to deliver services so that the company will make more money. That is the wisdom we are putting in the economy. In addition to this, all over the world, look at China you are talking about. Private capital went into China. That was made a difference. The free economic zones established in 1978, the liberalization, was what brought in capital into China. Yes, government had a lot of money in China and held on to the public sector. But also don't forget that the Chinese state is different from the Nigerian state. The Chinese state was a revolutionary state with ideology, with discipline, with commitment. The Nigerian state had flown variously between democratic and autocratic governance that did not come down until now we are stabilizing. So, but the Chinese, the difference was that they opened up the economy to the private sector. If they didn't, they will not be where they are now. So we are also opening up those sectors we closed down. We closed telecom, we closed power, we closed even airways until about 20 years ago before private airlines came to Nigeria. So we must open up. If there is another solution, please bring it forward. We are ready to employ that solution. But what I want is that power is supplied to the man at the factory 24 hours. If that power comes from a private company that is serious, better. In Aba now, Geometric is powering its system now to give about 24 hours power supply. The factories in Aba will be happy. They will no longer have to wait on NEPA. So that is what we want. So, and the investment that has come in will increase capacity. So please, let us be very, very sincere. If you say privatization is not the solution, was government control the answer? If government control was the answer, we will never have come to where we are now. So this is the reality that we face. So I think that we should be very sincere if we want the economy to grow. That is, we are trying all options. Where government can do something, we will do. Where the private sector is better placed, we will let them do it. We have never ruled out public sector participation. Not at all. The transformation agenda is weak. That is because of the President Gas Master Plan, and we're getting Dangote now coming to set up his own the largest refinery in the continent here in Ondo State because of government policy which has brought this energy on into our economy. And we're also having Dangote establish the largest cement company here in Obajana in Kogi State, the largest cement factory in the world. It's not in China or Russia or US, it's here in Nigeria. We're having Nigeria export cement for the first time. You are listening that somebody is saying we have just gotten our rice seedlings because the policy is working. You went to Kebbi, you saw me thrashing rice with the governor of Kebbi. You saw rice across local governments, not kilometers. You just see rice like bush moving in the dry season in Kebbi. So we saw that. So you can't say that the transformation agenda is weak. If it is weak, then we will not be where we are. And don't forget that this president has also been the most robust president in Nigerian history. Since the Civil War, never has there been a Nigerian leader that has been so fought, so abused, so distracted like President Goodluck Jonathan. Check it. Since the Civil War, maybe in the height of the Civil War, Gowon was also pinned down. But since the Civil War, there has not been any peacetime leader in Nigeria that has had to bear the troubles that President Goodluck Jonathan has had to bear in the last 3 years of his leadership. Boko Haram, crisis, induced political crisis everywhere, but it's still, because of this president's focus, humility, he has been able to run this economy in spite of these distractions. There is no president that is abused so freely. Some even say he's clueless. There is no adjective that is not used on our president. But he remains calm and focused. God says he will use the meek to shame the strong. That's what is going on. So we say, look, just focus. You know, the prophet said that they said that prophets have honor everywhere except in their own homes. Even Prophet Muhammad was stoned by his people. Was he not? He was stoned in Mecca. So all the prophets, they have suffered that. He is not a prophet, he's a simple politician that came to power by providence and is trying to solve our problems. But we are so impatient. You know, the problem with this country is that each time things are about to work, some people will just break it down for selfish reasons. But I believe this time Nigeria will move forward. And we are asking Nigerians to look at you will assess it yourself. And I think this present economic policy is one of the most consistent, and we're seeing results. And these are early results. 2 years. The first year was trouble of succession and election. It is between May 29, 2011 and now that the president has really settled down. Look at the results in 2 years. 2 years. Sometimes people think that Jonathan has been there for 10 years. He's been there for 2 years. And please don't bring the sins and trouble of other people on his head. He's only rebuilding things that other people broke down. If the rail was working, that's the point. That's the truth. So if the railways were working, will he go back and do the railways? If power was working, will you go back and be doing power? If the university universities were already working, will he doing so now? So he's having to do a lot of things that were left unattended to. So please give us a chance to do what we are doing. And I think the results are coming. The fact that he's not an arrogant leader with a horsewhip, who will be whipping at people, abusing him, who will be exchanging. We want to focus. These are done to distract us. So we will keep working. And it's the people of Nigeria that will decide. It is history that will decide. When we leave, people will compare us to others. But for the time we are here now, we understand that the one that knows how to do the job is the one that has never done it. Isn't it? So he is on the job now. Everybody will criticize him. That is why he's the leader. We accept the criticism, but I can show you that the transformation agenda is strong, it's working, it's transforming the Nigerian economy and society. Now, there are other questions that were asked by some of our colleagues. Education, I'm not taking them now. I've already taken health and so on. Education, whether because of my leads have their children in public schools, that's why we have problems in our universities. Maybe I cannot say answer for everybody, but I can tell you this. The problem in education has been wrong policy and lack of consistent attention to education for decades. So the rot has come now in our time, and it is our duty to fix it. We are not going to lay the blame on anybody or shy away from taking responsibility. So what we have had in education for a long time, particularly in the 80s, in the 70s, was that we had an explosion without consistent investment in education. And I tell you this, the president met 9.5 million people in the streets of northern Nigeria not going to school. He didn't cause it. 9.5 million children on the street. Every day they come out to the street to beg. They don't go to school. 9.5 million, more than 2 times the population of Liberia. I don't know how many times the population of Gambia. I don't know how many times the population of Benin. I don't know how many times the population even of Togo. They were on the street. 9.5 million is the population of many countries put together. These children were not going to school at all because there was not sufficient care. Now let me tell you, is it the president that puts people in primary school? Does federal government run primary schools? Primary schools are run by local government and states. The problem in this country is that we go to our village, there is no borehole, we say it's federal government. The village market is not swept, it's president. No, please, this is not the responsibility of the president. Some other persons who have responsibilities must do their work very well at different levels. But what we have done is that the president still holds the responsibility as the leader of Nigeria to make sure, because the world is going to ask, if there are now 9.5 million people out of school in northern Nigeria, what is the president of Nigeria doing? Because when he goes abroad, it becomes his problem. At the national level, it must become his problem because he's the father of all those children. So if those who should look after them didn't care, the president must care. And we're building 120 Almajiri schools to take those children out of streets with federal money, purely from federal money, not from state government money. 100 of those schools are now ready. You went on National Good Governance store, children are now, we are expecting now that the various state governments will now use those schools and put those children in school. So there is a responsibility for the federal government. There is a responsibility for the state government. There is a responsibility for local government. There is a responsibility for community. All of us must do our jobs well. So because there is no teacher in one school, it doesn't mean that the government policy is not working. We are also training teachers for your information. Training teachers. And I can assure you, since this democracy started, one clear thing, which was an advantage, is that primary school teacher salaries have never been delayed. Check it out. In the last 10 years, teacher salaries have now become routine. When I was teaching in the Second Republic, I was a school teacher, I was a headmaster, so I know the problem. Yes. Oh yes, I'm a grade 2 teacher trained. I was a school teacher, I was a headmaster when the coup took place, and I can tell you that for 6 months we were not paid. There was no salary. And we didn't go on strike because there was a commitment. Can you imagine, for 6 months we were never paid salaries. We didn't go on strike. We thought, and I will organize classes for children who are preparing for common entrance. Because if my children fail, I will never go and sleep. I won't feel happy. But the strike we are going on is for allowances, not for salaries. Salaries are consolidated and are being paid regularly. There has not been any complaint of salary in any of our higher institutions. Federal government pays them as and when due, and this is new consolidated salary. We are arguing about allowances. And these allowances, even when we agree to pay them, it is only now that we are sorting them out to know those who are even qualified for some of the allowances. And we can't, you see, we are leaders. There is no leader that will be happy to say that your own children are not at school or your schools are closed. Absolutely no. And for your information, a number of us, our children are in public universities. They are not abroad, they are here in Nigeria. So don't ever think, even the Minister of Education has children in public universities in Nigeria. So this idea you have that everybody up has his children abroad is not true. Our own children are in public schools, my own are at home also. It's not only your own. And at any rate, if it is the children of the masses that are involved, that's the more reason why the union should be a bit more lenient. So we are calling on our brothers and sisters. And not the president was a teacher. I'm a teacher. The Minister of Education came from the university. So all of us, virtually most people in this system, we started as teachers, and our priorities in education. I will not want to see any of my colleagues, whether at primary or anywhere, suffering. But we are saying when we have a problem, a strike alone cannot solve all problems. There are problems that we should talk to each other and resolve them. We don't have to lock every university and go home because some allowances have not been paid. And we have put down 30,000. They say we should put on 100,000 now. It's not easy. You need to come forward and also see how difficult it is. Because it's not an easy thing. So we are doing so. We will resolve this problem. What we are saying is we can open our universities while we begin to pay these allowances. Where 30 billion has already been put on ground. It's only for us to be a bit more, compassionate for our children. That's what it is. That is what it costs. We have never disagreed with ASU when it comes to the fact that the university needs more funding. We have never disagreed with ASU when it comes to the fact that we need to pay more attention, even to teachers' welfare. We are doing so, and we will continue to do so. But we cannot always resolve problems by shutting down the university system. There are costs that go beyond the allowances. So that's how it is. And we want everyone to bear with us, particularly our children who are at home. Mine at home too. So it's not only your own children, my own are also at home. And I know how uncomfortable it is. Every morning we pray, they say, oh, we pray, may God touch the heart of ASU. Let this strike end. That's why they pray every day. And we all join them and say, amen. So please, honestly, I believe that we need to reason with one another. Now we have, Pastor, you are always, you are very effervescent when you want to talk. First of all, we are asking Nigerians to even appreciate. Each time I say we have the best armed forces in this continent, I say so from position of knowledge. As you sleep, there are guys who are out there every night to keep you sleeping with your family. Whether they are policemen, whether they are state security people, whether they are soldiers, that is what they do for you every day. That's why we are secure. Now, not only the people of the government of Nigeria, the people of Nigeria must continuously appreciate our patriots who are doing everything to put their life on the line, sometimes die for us in peacetime. And the sad thing now is that our troops are dying in peacetime operation in their own country. I would prefer to see that my soldiers die outside fighting a war to defend Nigeria. But today, because of our own irresponsibility as citizens, we have created security situation where we are having to deploy our soldiers in the country. Which leader will want to deploy his troops in his own country? And that is why we continue to say that we must be responsible in the way we as leaders run our society at all levels. We all know the sources of these problems, but it is a responsibility for us. And for these soldiers, definitely the armed forces have their own traditions of honoring their gallant soldiers, their heroes. It's not something for a public debate or a press conference. We don't want to politicize the army. No. They have their own way of paying and honoring. And that honor is not necessarily about money. No, it's not about money. And that's the problem we have in this country. People think that honor means if I do something good, come and take money. We have so monetized. How can you monetize honor? You can't monetize honor. You can't monetize patriotism. You can't monetize somebody who has put down his life. What money will you give his family that can restore that life? So that honor comes in national recognition. It comes in your name, entering history, entering recognition. And I can tell you that the armed forces have a tradition. So I can assure you it will be the mere fact that America say $7 million on ABCD does not mean that Nigeria must repeat the same. We are not competing. Terrorism is a global threat. It's not only a threat against Nigeria. When they adopted French citizens, they were not Nigerians. Many foreigners have also unfortunately been caught in the web here and everywhere around the world. So terror has no boundary. Anybody can be a victim. So all the world were fighting terror together. What is most important is for us to do things because it is good to do so, not because money will be given to us. I don't want to monetize my patriotism and my commitment. I don't think you can pay me for the things I'm doing for this government. You can't pay me. If it is about salary, you can't pay it. So I know what it takes for me to put in my best. It's not about money, but about ensuring that we do our best for the country when we have an opportunity to do so. Whether we are teachers or cleaners or farmers or anything, our duty is to do something good so that when Nigeria is good, the next generation will appreciate us. That is what other countries have done for their children. We must do so for our children. So please, let us have a rethink about our commitment to the country and our value when we want to give ourselves to our country. We have, I think most of the questions, have been, I think I've addressed most of the issues. So what I can tell you is, we thank you for your participation. We welcome you to this conference and we thank you. Next month we will be here again to brief you, but keep the conversation going. Like I said, the last point I have not addressed is politics. Somebody asked me a question about politics. Why am I not talking politics? Let me tell you why I'm not talking politics here. I have come here to address you on the progress we are making. As for the political system, politicians have a way of addressing their problems. And I don't want to reduce my press briefing to politics. But you can see that all the politics is about 2015. The politics is about, election is coming in 2015. Everybody is positioning himself to see that he becomes councillor, he becomes governor, he becomes National Assembly member, he becomes president. That's all they fight about. The fight is not about your welfare. It's not about the economy. It's not about development. That's why I don't want to give it too much time. What I can say is every politician should play the game according to rules. And we must remember that power comes from God. Even if you tear down the system, you will not become president because you are tearing down the system. So we must focus on God and don't hit the system unnecessarily. Nigeria is for all of us. We can't stop anybody from becoming president. We can't. Only God will give. But the truth of the matter is our behavior must promote peace, must promote orderliness as politicians. And citizens must assess, because if it is about development, you will know it. But it's ambition that is driving the current things you see in the political atmosphere. And I'm sure the system will take care of it. God will continue to secure Nigeria. God has already written those who will lead. We're only struggling in the human realm. So you don't have to kill anybody to be president. You don't have to tear anybody down or blackmail anyone. Please focus on God. Nigeria belongs to all of us. So please, politicians like me and you, work for progress of Nigeria. Your ambition is not sufficient. Nigeria is greater than individual ambitions. That is my message.
Well, we want to thank the Honorable Minister of Information for addressing Nigerians and telling them what is happening in the economy. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of this program. Can we all now rise for the national